Okay, recording started. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is day 3 of Web Fundamentals. We are going over Flex this morning. Okay, this is going to be an upgrade to inline block, what we learned yesterday to create our flags. Let's learn how Flex works. Okay, it's a bit of a learning curve, like everything is, but once you learn it, you're going to see that it is the best tool to use for styling. Let's go over what Flex is. You guys see my screen all right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Move the chat around. Okay, so Flex seems like it has a key use, but it has so many uses. It's like a library of tools that come together with using Flex. So what is Flex? All right. Flex is like a library of tools when applying display flex to our parent div. Okay, this is different than the way we applied inline block. When we wanted blocks to be in line with each other, each block that we wanted to be in that line, we would apply inline block to. Now, this is different in that we apply flex to the parent div so that the children align in that even row. Okay, the parent div, when you apply flex to the parent, its children align in order. We gain access to a grand tool set of accompanying rules that will allow us to gain more access to the mobility of our children divs. When it comes to orientation changing, Flex allows for resizing, stretching, shrinking, and growing of our children divs. Okay, Flex allows us to avoid commenting that, avoid the common, excuse that typo, a common white space gap bug that comes with using inline block. So yesterday when we were working on our flags, we noticed that when we made them inline, there was still a little bit of white gap that we had to either adjust our code so that it was not in a formatted way to make it look like what we expected it to look like. But in reality, we get that little white gap, and with Flex we can easily avoid that without having to change our code in a way that makes it unreadable. Okay, Flex also has some accompanying rules. So you're not just applying display flex. There's some rules that when you apply display flex, come with it. It will help display flex do what you want it to do. So you can say a whole different way of arrangement. You can say flex, I want you to do flex start to start at the beginning, all right, with another accompanying rule, or flex end, or center, stretch. So this would be something that comes with just the justify content rule. Justify content is specifically for Flex, and justify content has its own set of spacing rules, all right? So remember, this is a library of tools, and it allows for versatility. All right, this is another example of using justify content rule that works with Flex. All right, let's continue here. What are some common features of Flex? Some commonly used rules for spacing a div in a row. Okay, I'll show you guys what I mean after this presentation, how to use Flex, but let's just describe the concept before we get into application. Okay, applying the rule align items center in the same place where display flex is applied will allow for the children within the container to center a line on the x-axis without its height stretched to the y-axis. When you apply flex on a parent that has children, its height will be fully stretched to that y-axis, that the height. When you say align item center, it'll remove that default stretch. Okay, I'll show you what I mean by that in a few minutes. Applying justified content space evenly or space around or space between will apply the space between the elements on the x-axis according to the rule applied. So you can control those blocks that are in the row and how far the space between them should be. Okay, here's an example. All right, here's more justified content. We can either center the items, we can make it to the end. Let's go over this diagram. This is a better example. You can center it, you can space the content by the space between, or use the space around to evenly divide those divs that are the children of the flex parent, or you can space evenly. We'll go over what the spacing rules for these exactly mean. I just want to introduce that flex comes with other rules that can be applied to enhance it. All right, here's some useful features. Whenever we create divs, they would stack on top of each other, right? When we apply flex, we can make the container's content align horizontally. That's what we're talking about this whole time. When you apply flex, its children they will align horizontally, and we can apply some spacing rules as well. Okay, that's what flex direction. Flex direction will tell us if we want it to be a row, if we want it to be a row in this order, or if we want our content to remain a column, or if we want it to be a reverse column. There's also the gap rule that comes with flex that's talking about how much space between each of the content we want there to be. So this would be gap 10 pixels, a small gap between each of the content, or 30 pixels, or you can make it 10 by 30. All right, more on gap. I think there's something here. No, that's not anything. The gap properly controls the space between flex items. It applies that spacing only between items and not the outer edges. If justified content space between is applied and the space is bigger than the gap defined, the gap will only take effect if that space would end up smaller. Okay, so when using justified content and gap together, figure out which one is going to take priority. And lastly, there's so many abilities that come with flex. I've only named a few in this slide presentation. If you want to know more, we have this link in the platform as well, but you can get a poster through this website, and it will show you all the different rules that can apply with flex to enhance it. All right, and there's some games that come with this as well. So we'll introduce a flex game at the very end here that it can enhance your practice. So let's go over flex from the very start in application now. Okay, so before, when we wanted to align blocks, we would use inline block. This is an example of the white space that we would see, right? And in order to do that, we'd have to arrange our code in an ugly way to make the white space go away. Now we're going to use flex. So let's go ahead and do that. I've copied this code here into Visual Studio. So now I just need to apply some CSS. Let's see what this looks like before we apply CSS. All right, these are my 3 blocks. These are the 3 blocks we received from the platform. There's 3 divs. Each div has an H3 and a P tag. Each div class is called column, and they're all within this div class container. So now let's apply some of the CSS we were talking about. I'm going to copy this code here and paste it. The only thing is I'm going to remove flex and align item center so we can just refresh our view here. So this is our page now. These are our three columns. They're all in that, what color is that? Bleached almond color. And so if we want flex to be applied, we have to see where we're applying it. We need to apply it to the container so that the children align in that row. So that is why this rule flex, we're about to apply it and it's living in the container. We're not applying flex to the columns. As you can see here, flex is not on the columns. So we want these three vertically stacked div blocks to go horizontal, just like we would see in inline block, but now we're going to use flex. So let's uncomment our display flex. And now, as you can see, they're in a row side by side next to each other. So what I'm trying to show you guys here is how flex works. We are going to apply flex to the parent div to make the children align nicely in order. Okay, let me give you guys this little line that you guys can use to help memorize how flex works. A flexible parent has its children in order. Okay, think about a parent that you see at the grocery store. Children are running all over the place. Suddenly the parent realizes and grows extra arms and can grab all the children at once and put them in order. Okay, so that's how we're going to memorize that. A flexible parent, so we apply flex to the parent, has its children in order. All right, so I'm going to uncomment flex, and you can see they go back to being a column. We want them to be in order in a row. So we'll apply flex to the container, class container. This is the parent div holding all the columns. If we apply flex to the children, is that going to work? It's not going to work. You can see here, it didn't work. We want them to be side by side next to each other. We don't want flexible children. We want a flexible parent. All right, so let me take a poll. Do we understand that when we apply flex to the parent, not the children?
My question is, can you still apply flex to children?
You can apply the flex to the children if there's a purpose for it.
Okay.
If this child, let's say, has its own three div class containers, or its own three div children that you wanted to be in order, that's the only case. If
Okay.
the child is itself a parent and you want that parent's children to be in order, then you apply flex to that child.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. All right, here's another thing. Flex only applies to the direct descendants, only to the children, not to the grandchildren. Okay? Flex only applies to the direct descendants, the children, not its grandchildren. So for example, let's create in this column, let's create three divs. Div times 3. Enter. And in here, I'll say lorem times 2. No, it didn't work. Lorem times 2. Wow. Okay. It's really not wanting to work. I see it trying to. There we go. Just copy these here. Okay. So what if we apply flex now to this specific column? We're going to call it column 1. Column 1. Oh, we say class. Column 1. Display flex. Okay, we have 3 divs in here in column 1. And now those 3 divs lined side by side next to each other within column 1. And that's because we put flex on column 1. We remove it and they are unordered, right? They're in a complete column. You don't see where one begins or ends. We want them to be in order. So the parent of these 3 divs is column 1. So if we apply display flex to column 1, now we have these 3 divs in order, as you can see here. All right, so that's another example of flex. Let's continue. I'm going to remove these 3 divs and make it as it was before. Okay, here we are. There's one more rule I said here that we were going to uncomment, and that's align items center. So let's take a look at our page, align items center. And who can tell me from the slide presentation what we said this would do? It's either going to align items on the y-axis up and down or the x-axis, the horizontal. So which one do you think it would be?
Right in the middle.
Okay, right in the middle in which direction? On the y-axis. So it's going to center it in that vertical plane. Without align item center, they will take up the full height of their container. When you apply align item center, they will only take up the height that their content is demanding. So this H tag that we see that's within, the space above and below is the padding for that, or the margin for that H tag. Then we have the P tag, the space above and below is the margin for that P tag. And they both exist in this column. They only need to take up the space that their text is occupying. And in order for us to make it do that, when we apply flex is to also say align item center. So if we apply this rule at the same place that we applied flex, the children that became in order also now respect their height. They're not going to extend to the full height of their parent. They're only going to extend to the height of their content that they contain. Okay, so this is chance for another poll check. How well do we understand align items center? Okay, when we arrange some divs with flex, you can also change how they align vertically by align items center.
So we can only execute align items if we have flex.
Exactly, and it has to be in the same place as where flex is applied. You can't apply align item center to the columns. It has to be applied where the parent has flex. Okay, so continuing on in our platform, I'm here on this slide, the flex advantage under display property. Let's continue. Here's our assignment. We need to use flex to solve this one, flex our blocks. This is a practice assignment. It shouldn't take long. Actually, when we understand the rules, it shouldn't take more than 5-10 minutes, okay? So definitely don't want to skip this assignment, even though it's practice. We also have the rule justified content. We also have the rule justified content. So here is our parent div that we called container. We've defined 3 different columns. We've said display flex and align item center. That aligned our children in the vertical center here. Let's do something to our parent. Let's expand it. Let's make the width a little bit longer. So our container, we're going to say the width is going to be 1,000 pixels. Let's see how wide that is. So now we see the gray area extends far to the right. Let's make it even more, 1,500 pixels. This gray area here, its length is 1,500 pixels. I can prove this if I inspect it. And I'll move this to the bottom. So if I hover over this gray area, I click it, I should see the width here, 1,500 pixels. So this gray area is 1,500 pixels. If this is the parent, I want the children to space themselves in the gray area, not just clump up together at the left-hand side. So how do we do that? We have to apply the rule justify content. So let's start with that. Justify content. And we'll apply that under align items. Doesn't matter where, it just has to be at the same place where we apply display flex. So justify content. And we'll start with space around. This is what happens. Justify content space around has now moved the children, and they are spaced in an almost even way. There's an almost even way that these are spaced, but now we are able to space these out. We don't have to use margin. We don't have to use padding. We just use justify content on the parent that contains children that we said display them as flex, make them in order, horizontal order. Then we said align items center. So make them only take up the height of their content. And then we also said justify content space around, which evened them out. So let's go over what these justify content rules mean exactly. What do they do? What is it exactly that they're doing? Okay, let's go to this link here at the bottom of the page. And it's going to have defined for us what each justify content rule does exactly. Justified content space between, actually it doesn't have it so defined here. What I want to go to is W3 schools. Here we are. So this is a good website to get rules as well. W3 schools. I'll direct you guys here if you are interested. And here we're going to learn some rules about justify content. Okay, so the first one we said was space around. Items will have space before, between, and after them. And if we hover over the rule here, it says it aligns flex items along the main axis of the current line flex container. So as we see here, it has aligned our items as such. The space in the middle between these items are twice the size of the space on the edges. That's how it works for justify content space around. Let's look at how justify content space between works. Justify content space between moves the outer divs to the farthermost edges that they can go to. And the ones in the middle are left to be in the middle, with the space remaining to be evenly divided. Okay, that's justify content space between, and we'll go over these again at the very end. Let's go over the last one, space evenly. Who can guess what this means? There's even spaces on all sides, right? So this is justify content space evenly. So you have 3 different justified content rules, and they all work like this. Let's take a pulse check.
I think you muted yourself.
I had to mute myself to cough. I didn't unmute myself. Yes, so what I was saying was you're going to have to play with this yourself in order to get familiar with it, right? You can't just learn an instrument by watching someone else play it. You have to struggle with it yourself. What I want you guys to take away is that there's these 3 key rules that work together. Display flex, align items center, and justify content, either space evenly, space between, or space around. All right, last rule, I'm going to have to comment out justify content to show you guys this, is gap. All right, I'll say gap 20 pixels. What does that do? It adds a gap between each item of 20 pixels. So if you need just a little bit of spacing there, you can use gap with flex to space that tiny little space between each item. It doesn't arrange it like justify content does. It just gives that little bit of space necessary if you need it. Okay, I think we're moving along pretty fast, pretty well. Now, this is your core assignment that you're going to want to complete for today. As it says here on the calendar, we have core assignment, flexible columns, and GitHub blocks. So let's look at this one, GitHub blocks. We have 3 rows and images in each of the rows. And they are spaced out pretty evenly here, right? Whether it's the 3rd row, 2nd row, there's a formation to each image where it should be. And we should only have to use flex, align items, and justify content to put it together. Okay, it's a lot like this row here, right? This row of content has 3 evenly spaced divs. So this, what I'm working on here, is a lot like your core assignment here. All right, I also want to introduce this flex property, and it's just the word flex with a number on it. How does this work? It's a little bit of division that we have to do. So if, for example, we say, let's use our example here, flex 1. We're going to apply flex 1 to all of our columns, and we're going to remove justified content space evenly. And now what do we see? We see each flex item evenly is spaced across the whole parent. Why? Why is that? Because saying flex 1 is saying I'm going to give you a third of the piece of the pie. If there are 3 of you and you give flex 1 to each one, you are giving 1/3 to each of your children there. So if this is the parent, and we said flex 1 on all of the columns, and there are 3 columns, then each column gets 1 piece of the pie. that means the whole pie is divided into 3. So this will be 1/3, this will be 1/3, and this will be 1/3. What if I made a class called column 3? I made this one the last one, column 3. And I said I wanted column 3 to be flex 2. What do you think would happen in this case? Column 1, all these first 2 columns get flex 1. And this column 3 gets flex 2. So how many pieces of the pie are there now?
Four.
Okay, let's take a look. Now, the first 2 only get 1 piece. And the last one, column 3, gets 2 pieces. So now we have 4, as you've said. And the last one, column 3, gets 2. So it will be half. It gets half of the pie. All right, let's increase column 3 flex to 3. Now, how many pieces of the pie are there?
5.
Okay. Right. And that's because it's saying column 1, they each get 1 piece. Column 3 gets 3 pieces. If there's 2 regular columns and they each get 1 piece, that's 2 pieces. Plus column 3 getting 3 pieces, that's 5. So this is dividing it into 5 and giving the third column 3 pieces of the pie. Let's do a pulse check on how well we're understanding how that flex rule is applied. We apply it to the children, and depending on how much we give is how large the pie is and how much it's divided by. Does anyone have any questions about this one in particular?
So on the one that you assign more pieces, you could just go and align it by itself, right, to take up the empty space? Like you could align it center in all the extra empty space that it's taking up by itself?
What are you calling empty space? All the space to the right of it?
Yeah, the 2 extra pieces that it gets, but it's technically not using.
It is using them. It just doesn't have words to fill to that end. So if I inspect here, where's my inspect? And I hover over this one, all that area is being taken up. It's just not using all of its property.
Okay.
So if I highlight over it, it is taking all that space, just that column. It just doesn't have enough text to fill all of it. Okay, anything else I need to introduce? Yes. Let's go over this here. There's so much more to flex than what I just introduced, but in order to ground yourself and not be overwhelmed by the amount of flex rules, all we have to take away from this lesson is that we need to apply flex to the parent to make the children align in order. We need to apply align item center and also use justify content along with it. Gap is optional, but these 3 rules together, let me just uncomment this. These 3 rules together is your starter kit. Use these 3 to style your page for now. Then we can learn the additional flex rules like what we're seeing here. Flex direction, flex wrap, flex flow, align self, and order, right? There's a lot that goes with flex, but to start with, we only need to worry about understanding these three. Okay, I don't want to overstress you guys by how much flex has. If you want to learn all the flex rules, then a good way to get acquainted is to play this froggy game. So I'll remove this here. This is how the game starts. It already has display flex applied to it. You need to write the accompanying rule to display flex to make this frog go to this lily pad. All right, we're pretending this is a div that we want to move to the right part of its container. So if we say justify content flex end, that's how this rule works. It's going to move this to the very end, to the rightmost area. We can move on to the next level, and it will ask me, how do we make these frogs go to the center of their container? Well, you apply display flex, and you also say justify content center. Okay, so there's more to justify content than space around, space between, and space evenly. This game will get you familiar with all the flex rules. Okay, but before you get on to playing this game, I would encourage you to complete all the practice and core assignments that we have for you today. Flex our blocks, GitHub blocks, flex navbar, and flexible columns. 2 of them are core, but the practice ones will really help you, especially flex navbar. This one will come in really handy for doing the following assignments and especially the test. Okay, learning how to make a navbar with flex is going to be super important. And this afternoon, I'm going to give a demo in Flex. I'm going to use Flex to create, I'm going to find something that I can mock or mimic, maybe a website, or I'll create a template myself, and I'll use Flex to mimic that design. Okay, then after that, we have code and lab reviews. I'll open this up later on. I'll tell you guys when it's open in the Discord chat. And you should be able to go into the code review part of the schedule and edit your name and whatever you want to be reviewed. I'll let you guys know when this is open. It's not open yet, but we'll be starting these today if you want to take advantage of it today. So we'll do the lecture first at 2, then we'll do the reviews if anyone wants to do a review today. Okay, we still have Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday to sign up for reviews.
So, and then you said that it was required that we do the lab or code review, but we only have to do it once over those 4 days. Did I understand that right?
Exactly. You only have to do it once over these 4 days, and that's all you need to be able to take the test in addition to your core assignments.
So for the code review part, what
Yes.
code are you asking us to review?
Any of the core assignments that you've completed, either something that you're proud of or something that you've struggled with. It depends on how you want to use the code review for yourself, right? I would encourage you to use the code review to prep for the exam. So pick something challenging that you can get critiqued on, or if you're doing something right, that we can affirm that you're doing it right so that you're well prepared for the exam. Don't just pick an easy core assignment from day 1 or 2 and then say, say, oh, you did it well, but it was one of the easier assignments, right? Pick something challenging. I would say like profile page or likes or dojo weather, okay? Those are more like the tests, so I would pick something challenging to use for your code review.
Does it have to be something that we worked on like in this class?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Has to be a core assignment from this class.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and we'll be critiquing your code in front of a group of whoever else signed at that hour for the code review. Okay, everyone. Well, if we have no further questions, I think now's a good time to end the lecture. We're over the hour again. So that's how we work Flex. We apply it to the parent, we apply the accompanying rules, align items, and justify content. That's what I want you guys to take away for now. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. This is super important, and I'm glad I remembered it. Let's take away these flex rules. Okay. Now, I'm just gonna delete them. All right, so we're going to just spacing through justify content. Now you see it spaced out, right? Justify content, align items, and flex together. What if I remove this width? If I remove the width, even though I'm saying I want you guys to space yourself out evenly, there's nowhere to space to. It's taking up the full width of its container. These three columns are taking up the full width of its parent. So in order to make them space out evenly, I have to expand the width of the parent itself. So if I expand the parent to 1500 pixels and apply justify content space evenly, then we'll see here that space applied. Okay, but we need to expand the width of the parent so that justify content allows us to space between that extra space that's allowed. If we take away the width, justify content is still there. It's being applied, but there's no space to expand into. All right, let me do a pulse check for this one because this is super important to understand. Do we understand that justify content will not work unless we expand the parent div to have some space to move into, to space into? Okay, and let's use flex from now on. All right, let's not use inline block. Let's use flex to space our divs. We target the parent and its children should align themselves based on their parent. And Aaron asks, doesn't 720 pixels 220 by 3 equals 660 for the 3 windows? Shouldn't there be some gray lines between the windows? I'm not sure what you mean by the windows there, Aaron.
So in each column between, if you go back to the width of 1000, you see that they have spaces in between,
Right.
right? Those sections in between them. But when you take off that width, there's a line above that says the width is 720, which is greater than the 3 windows, the 3 columns widths of 220.
I see what you're saying. So
Yeah.
each should 220 times 3 should be 660, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so and the width is 720, right? So let me undo that. And let's inspect this. So each div, when you don't have, but in this case, it's trying to space itself. Let's remove this as well. When you apply flex, the children, in this case, are going to be 240. They're going to expand to the width of their parent. Let me expand the parent just a little more here. Let's make it 800. I want to see if it grows with it. Why are these 240 then?
Is it padding?
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's what it is. It's 220
Okay.
plus a padding of 10 on all sides.
That makes more sense. So
Yeah.
it's 240 times 3 is equal to 920.
Yeah,
So
so
that's greater than-
220 with 10 on the left and right. So the width is actually 240 each. So that's
Yeah, okay.
good question. Okay, so I think now is a good time to end the lecture and go into our breakout groups. So if we have no further questions, we'll go ahead and do that now. Again, today's end of day goals are flexible columns, flex our blocks, GitHub blocks, and flex navbar. We'll do another flex demo in the afternoon. All right, and if you finish with all those, you have homework reading for tomorrow, which is position. But what our main concern today is to get a good understanding of flex. This is going to be really helpful to completing our test next week with a good score. All right, so let's go ahead and end the lecture now. I'll stop sharing if we have no further questions. Okay, let's end the recording then.